So it's officially been over 3 months since I started doing art full time. And I know a lot of you asked for kind of like me to vlog my experiences and like kind of track what it's like doing this transition. And to be honest, it's been kind of interesting. There's been a lot of ups and downs with like going full time and like basically making my side hustle my full hustle. And like I've always been passionate about art and wanting to make it my business. So I want to share with you guys some of the things that I went through, I guess, for the last couple months. I meant to document like the whole first month, but this ended up being 3 months of documenting on and off because it was like both the transition was weird for the first month and then having the holidays mixed in. I'm like, you know what? We're just going to kind of reflect on the whole beginning of this little art career now. And then while we're talking about everything, I'm going to intersplice a couple clips. I got a couple things from the con that I did like right at the tail end of my contract with my day job, as well as just kind of vlogging some stuff that happened over the last few months and just me doing art full time. So first off, I'm going to go through a couple things I learned within the first couple months about myself and about this transition. These were kind of interesting lessons to work through and not something that I really saw going into this, but you know, things happen, especially changing your life and your lifestyle and everything about it, just like out of nowhere. It's an interesting transition. So first off, I was way more ambitious than I thought. This kind of encompasses a couple of lessons I learned, but I learned very quickly that even with extra time and not having to do all of my stuff in a couple hours after my day job, it still isn't a ton of time to work on stuff. So the first pillar was my comic Fox Among Hounds, and this was like my top priority going into this. Like I really want to finish this comic and get it done within a year, at least have like the first book basically ready. I'll go through this a little bit more, but I felt like I was creating a lot of pages, but also not moving very quickly on it. And I think that's just because I had a lot of pillars in mind going into this. The second pillar was working on like my YouTube stuff and growing my social media and doing more Twitch streams. I wanted all of these pillars to kind of feed into each other, especially with this one. So like when I'm working on Fox Among Hounds, it can be content that goes into YouTube or like in these vlogs, like me working on the actual pages. And so I was trying to keep that in mind when making all of these pillars, is like all of them could feed into this one as well, of being like sharing my experience or like sharing the process of making things. This one has been probably the more easier to manage out of all of my pillars, but it's also been taking more time than I thought I would, especially with making shorts and full-length videos and just trying to be a presence on multiple platforms. It just takes a lot of work. My third pillar was putting more time into the podcast that I'm in, which is the Roaring D20s. I wanted to make more artwork for it, update our character sprites, do more social posts, and this one has gotten away from me majorly. These took way more time than I thought it would. Like between designing the characters took a lot more time, and then I was a little ambitious with my idea for basically a new animated short. The newest one I posted was a very high detailed, full colored, like animatic type of style, and it was way too much work. So I've been trying to like refocus and try to find another way to make these entertaining and engaging, but put them at a little bit less work, because I was wanting to make one every 2 weeks and it more turned into one of them took a whole month. So, you know, again, restructuring and figuring things out. And then my fourth pillar is my creature compendiums. And this one also is one that could feed into YouTube and Twitch streams as well, because we can make monsters on streams. I can make videos with them, and then those monsters can be put into the books as well. But I haven't really been on top of making monster art as much. So at least on my end, I was kind of struggling to keep up with creating creatures, but then the people I'm working with that are helping me with writing lore and crafting stats and other things, they've been really on top of it. So that's been really nice. Like we're still moving and chugging along on it, but I'm just behind on the art. So it is what it is. So with those 4 pillars in mind, I'm going to give them like a percentage status, I guess. It's only been 3 months, but I would say most of my time has gone into YouTube and maintaining social. So I would say the pillar, that's taken probably about 50% of my time to edit, record, schedule, all that stuff. And then Fox Among Hounds, I've been trying to keep it at quite a big chunk of time as well. So that's been probably about like 35% of my time, maybe more like 25%. And then I feel the remaining 25% is getting split between Creature Compendium prep and my podcast. And I guess that leads into the next thing I learned, which is I do have a lot more time, but I had a lot of difficulty in the beginning, like structuring and planning and scheduling, which was really surprising for me. It was surprising because like I was able to do a lot of scheduling and planning when it was a side hustle, but then again, I only did like 2 things. Like I didn't try to cram in a lot of different projects at once. So I was able to maintain it a little bit better, even though I was only like, I don't know, 3 to 4 hours every day working on either the Creature Compendium or YouTube. And starting this year here in January, I actually started doing bullet journaling and kind of tracking what I want to accomplish every month. And that has helped me a ton. Like it has made it really accomplishable. And like I'm able to look quickly at a glance and see what I want to get done for the month and how it's aligning with my goals of like what I want to finish. And so that's been a surprise. Like that's been really nice here in January to finally like get it all on paper and like kind of figure it out for myself. With that too, I think a third point that was really interesting was basically for the entire first couple months, I felt like I had to sprint constantly. It was a very weird feeling. Basically, it still didn't compute that I didn't have to go back to a day job. So like my brain was like, oh my God, like I have to finish all of this by this date, like for sure. And that's been a very interesting adjustment just because I am so used to coming home from my day job and being like, all right, I can't rest. I can't do anything. I have to go right up to my office and work for 3 to 4 hours to make sure my stuff gets done. So I was bringing that mentality every day to working. And it doesn't help that the first couple months I was also doing freelance. So I had some freelance contracts like eating into the time that I could work on my business, but I needed it. I needed the cash to pay for cons for this year. But besides that, it did feel like it because I still kind of almost had like a day job on the side with doing this freelance. So I can understand why my brain went into the gotta hustle, gotta keep on top of things mentality. But I feel this was more detrimental than helpful because then I felt very guilty for resting or for going to the gym or staying on top of my health because I was still in that mindset of like, I have a 9 to 5 and I have to come home and I have to work my tail off for 3 to 4 hours to keep this side hustle going. So now here in the new year, it feels a lot more accomplishable because I only have one freelance contract that only is like a day and a half a week. And then I'm able to work on my stuff full time, basically fully again. And I guess the final point that I learned through these couple of months is, I guess, the importance of rest. I was very bad about it, basically through all of my 20s and here in my early 30s. I just was like hustling constantly. I was working, trying to get everything done, trying to get my videos done, the Creature Compendium, everything constantly on the side of a 40-hour-a-week day job. And I think a certain amount of hustle is fine, especially if you have a goal or something that you want to achieve. But I know I was treading into the not healthy zone for it. So now being able to work on my art full time, I've actually started playing video games again and like trying to relax a little bit by like reading. I'm like reading comics again. I have so many books on my bookshelf back there that I haven't even touched because I was like, oh, I'll sit down and read this. And I just never did. And then by resting and like ingesting a lot of creative content like video games, movies, comics, I'm getting more inspired to come back and work more, you know, like on my stuff because I'm very inspired by what I ingested. It's the whole creative bank thing. I'm putting money in so then I can cash it out on my stuff. So that's been nice because coming into doing art full time, I was for sure burnt out. Like starting in September, I was like really stressed between conventions and like trying to wrap up the day job and then also trying to like hustle what I needed to for my business. And I've probably been riding a burnout for quite a few years now. I still feel a little bit of it tingling in the back of my brain here and there. But I feel being able to do the rest now is like slowly making my burnout feel much better. And then also not having to work like over 80 hours a week between the day job and this on the side. I still am working a lot. I think I am working probably close to 50 to 60 hours on like my business and everything, but I don't feel as exhausted by it, I guess. Okay, so after the things I learned, I wanted to share like my new scheduling that I've been doing for this year. And like I mentioned earlier, I started bullet journaling and trying to track what I want to do. So earlier this year, I showed you guys the bingo card of everything I wanted to get done this year. And what I did is I took all of those bingos and tried to break them out into months and seeing what I could do each month to get those goals accomplished. Because my big problem with my self-diagnosed ADHD neurodivergent spicy brain is I tend to like think of everything at once. I get very overwhelmed very quickly. So beginning of this month, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do Fox Among Hounds. I got to do my creature compendium. I need to stay on top of YouTube, but then I need to do this. And it was just very overwhelming. So writing out everything that I needed to do and like very crucial deadlines was a huge help. So I have this huge Word document with a bunch of stuff that I wanted to get done each month, and then some extra things of like, I would like to accomplish these, but I don't know where to put them yet. And then after figuring that out, I took my journal and I basically went through and made a little checklist of like the overall goals for the month. I'll put a picture so you guys can see it better, but these are like my goals for the month of what I want to get done overall with like nice little check boxes so I can feel accomplished when I do them. And then I broke it down even further, like with content creation. I'm like, okay, I have these shorts I want to get done and these videos. Let me track basically my progress on them and what I'm getting done. And then this year, I'm trying to be much better about my health. I've been very negligent of it. I do work out here and there, but I haven't been very consistent. And it's starting to show on some of my blood work. So I'm trying to stay on top of everything. So I decided to add it here too with like sticking to a meal plan and doing my walks after my meals and like my workout schedule. And so I added that in here as well because how I see it is like my body is also work, you know, like I need to maintain my body so then I can keep doing stuff and creating content and doing this as a job because at the end of the day, it's the only thing keeping me around to be able to do stuff. You know what I mean? So I felt that it needed to be highlighted in this as well because it's also very important to me. And then finally, I added a production calendar. This one, I was trying to find like a digital way to do this, but I couldn't find any really great templates. I've seen like these big Excel spreadsheet production calendars that people use for like animation and shows, but I wanted something like that for my comic chapter. And so this one, I just have the first comic production of where I'm at with the different steps. So then I can just keep track of it and do a quick glance of like, okay, well, I'm almost done with cleanup. I'm a little ways into line art and flats and like just trying to keep a good eye so that I can accomplish this by the end of January. And then I've been living by my calendar. I've basically been taking everything from my bullet journal, putting it on my Google Calendar and just tracking like what needs to happen when. And then now that I've done this for a couple months, I now understand how long certain things take. So it's much easier for me to plan out timing of like, okay, I have to work on this thing for X amount of hours for it to actually be done. For example, video editing, I used to only put like a 2-hour segment when sometimes the videos have been taking 4 to 5 hours. And so now I'm like, all right, I got to pad it out a little better. And it's been working really well so far. And then finally, a thing that I want to cover is the weird guilt and like more negative feelings that come with going full time. I know like for me, I'm very much a people pleaser and it's very easy for me to impose a lot of self-guilt on myself. But I feel like a lot of people don't talk about the negative sides of maybe going full time with your passion. There's a lot of positives and I'm very grateful and I'm very lucky to be able to do this. So I don't want these negatives to come off as me not being grateful for being an artist and being able to do this full time. But I want to share it so other people don't feel alone and don't feel like they're suffering from this because it's just them. You know, a lot of us suffer from a lot of these feelings. So the first one that I still am struggling with and I'm not fully past is the guilt of needing to make money. Capitalism. But it's been really hard for me to get past this because I'm not making any income for myself or my husband. You know, it's all going into the business and the business has basically either been in the red or breaking even. I'm not really making a lot of profit here at the outset. Like, yes, cons did help me make money through the years and like same with Kickstarters and helping me make product. but it hasn't been like a huge boon in money, you know? I think the other thing that adds into this is I watch a lot of other like full-time comic convention artists, and I follow a lot of their vlogs, and just like comparing numbers is a little hard because I know they're further along into it. They have more product, they have more time to put into it, and they're quite a few years ahead of me in being full-time. But it's still that pressure of like, oh, maybe I should make stationery, or maybe I should make this, and trying to think of ways to monetize my content, which has really been detrimental to some of those projects that I'm working on. For example, Fox Among Hounds, I can't sell books of it until it's done, but I want to make it just because I want to make it, you know? And so this initial time of creating the comic book, there's no money to be had, you know, but my brain is like, you should be finding a way to make money to sustain this business. And that's been really hard. It's been a very heavy guilt to get past. And then it also spurs up, like, I guess the gut instinct to like jump into something else. Like, oh, I see someone over here is making, I don't know, like coasters. I better hurry and make coasters. It's weird. It's something I need to keep in check because I know myself, and it's very easy for me to jump into doing random things because I want them to work. One of the things I've always been really bad about is kind of being a little wishy-washy to a certain extent. Like, I have very particular goals, but if something looks good or if something isn't working like right away, I kind of want to jump ship on it and try this other thing that looks good. And I know that's been very negative for my business. And I think a lot of it comes from the guilt of like, well, this thing isn't working how I thought it would, so let me hurry and do this thing. So that's been a really hard one to get past, but I feel I'm getting better. It's slowly getting better as I'm doing this more, and I'm feeling more confident about myself and what I'm doing. But that leads into another thing, the major imposter syndrome. I've been suffering from huge imposter syndrome going into doing art full time because when I was younger, I had a very distinct like vision for what it would be like for me to achieve a goal or achieve this thing that I'm doing now. I've talked about this with my therapist because it's very interesting because it wasn't this big grandeur thing. It wasn't like, oh my God, I got picked up by a publisher or I got hired by Nickelodeon. You know, there was very distinct things that I thought of when I was younger that would be like almost like the threshold for me to be able to go full time and do art all the time. But it was, I got laid off from a job and I'm just going to try it. And I'm not making money off of it. I'm not successful with it per my younger self. And so the first couple months of imposter syndrome was crazy. I mean, I still suffer from it, of like not feeling like I'm fully where I need to be to achieve this thing. You know, it's interesting. It's very weird. And I know a lot of people probably have similar feelings to me and just don't share it, but it's interesting going full time. It's a weird feeling of like, I feel like I can do it, but also that I'm not ready or not right for it. But I just got to work through it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to blast through it and like keep making what I can make. But, you know, some days it does get overwhelming. So, yeah. I guess the third thing going into that with that feeling of imposter syndrome is also being a little bit more critical about myself and critical about the success of certain things. Because now that this is my job, I need to be a little bit more hyper vigilant about what's working, what's not, like what on YouTube is getting views to help me, you know, get funds to make more product, what's selling well at cons, what isn't, should I make new product? Like, it's a lot more to think about now that I have to think about it maybe becoming something successful instead of it just being a side thing where I don't have to make money. You know, it was just more of a passion. So yeah, going into this year, I was thinking a lot about like what I need to order ahead of time, especially with like the state of my country. I'm worried about tariffs and other things. So I ordered some game mats and a couple new things for booths coming up. But yeah, so that really added to the hardships of the first couple months of like being very critical of like, well, I need this to work, but I need to order these things ahead of time. It's just all been an interesting ride for the first few months. And I guess the final thing that's been kind of like a guilt stress is the hypervigilance about getting into cons and different shows. I have been trying so hard to stay on top of applications and like due dates for applications, and then just trying to look at what cons are really good for the year. And then part of this is out of my hands. Like, I cannot control which shows I'm accepted into, but I really want to try to get into 10 shows this year. So far, I've been accepted to 5, and I still have the second half of the year to wait for either applications to open or to be accepted. But it is still hard to like kind of be in this like waffling state of like, oh, I got accepted this one. Oh, I got rejected. I got accepted this one. Oh, I got rejected. And it's an interesting feeling now that the cons are going to be my main source of income, that I feel they're more important than ever. So yeah, that's kind of been my experience transitioning into a full-time artist. I am very happy with where I'm at, especially going into this new year. I feel like I have a much better idea of what I want to do for the year and what I want to accomplish. And after doing the first couple months of this, I can see what worked and what didn't. And that helped me a lot to kind of refocus and figure out what to do for this new year. And if you're thinking about going full-time, or maybe also feeling like conflicting feelings about having this as a side hustle or other things, like, give yourself some grace, because I think all of us are trying to figure out what works best for us. And then going into doing something full-time or pursuing a business, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and like, you're going to have wins and you're going to have some hard times. So just give yourself some grace, especially transitioning. Like the last 3 months for me have been crazy. So, you know, give yourself a little bit of freedom and space to figure out who you are in this new role and what you want to do. And it's totally valid to keep your passions as a side thing. You know, you don't need to make it like a full-time business. A lot of the convention artists I know don't even do cons full-time. They still have part-time to full-time day jobs like I did. But yeah, it's just something you need to figure out for yourself and see what fits well for you. So if you want to go full-time, I like it. I encourage it, if you can afford it, but just be smart with it. It's been an interesting transition. And if I was laid off at any other time, this would have been a very different story. Like, if my husband wasn't the main breadwinner at this point, and if we were in a financial state that we were back in like our 20s, like, this would have been a whole different story. So I encourage you to take your time, feel it out, and see what works for you. But either way, thank you guys for stopping by and watching this video. I hope this was informative. This has been a very interesting couple months. If you have more questions, leave them down below, like of different things that you're itching to ask about either being full-time or transitioning to this, because I want to do a couple more like day in a life vlogs of like, you follow me for a week of doing this full-time and seeing what I do. I thought that'd be really fun, but maybe I could answer some of those questions in other future vlogs or other future Q&As of things. I also want to give a shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys so much for supporting me and supporting my business. If you guys want to join, we have a mail club where you get a print and a sticker sheet in the mail every month of like different monsters I've been making or different cool designs. Go jump on my Patreon. Patrons are directly helping me buy new merchandise or get ready for conventions, so every dollar helps. And thank you guys also for watching the videos and the Twitch streams and like subscribing on Twitch. Like, all of that helps. Like, the views and the monetization is helping me make this a little bit more sustainable. And so I really appreciate your guys' support and following along on my art journey. But either way, thank you guys again so much for stopping by, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.